welcome to a very special edition of EWTN Bookmark. I'm Keck, and joining us from our EWTN West Coast studios on the campus of Christ Cathedral are our good friend, Father Robert Spitzer, S.J., and he's joined by Tim Bush of the NAPA Institute. We're going to talk about the NAPA Institute and its upcoming summer conference, Equipping Catholics for the Next America. It's running July 29th through August 2nd, so that's coming up Wednesday through Sunday that week, and that's next month. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. It's very exciting to talk to you live from our West Coast studios.
Great to be with you too, Doug.
Well, Father, you actually have your Magis Institute is actually located in the same building now as our West Coast studio, right? You're just upstairs from us, correct?
Correct, and have to say we're building the fireman's pole right now so that the partnership can continue, and we'll just zip right on down here for these shows.
Yeah, we're excitingly hoping that we'll be doing some other programming with you, hopefully a live show later this summer focused on the family and on the catechism and faith and reason, and that's an exciting opportunity that we now have by having this studio. And one of the members of the team that made it all possible, not only for the Magis Institute to be where it is, but for us to be where we are, along with the diocese and of course the bishop himself, Bishop Van, has been Mr. Tim Bush, who had a great vision for putting together a lot of Catholic apostolates and in many ways lay apostolates. Tim, why was that your vision?
Well, I can see that as recently has been a major movement in our American church are these apostolates. They're almost like startups or venture capital for evangelization, and they can move more nimbly. They're financed by benefactors, and they have great inspiration, like the NAPA Institute by Father Spitzer as president, the Magis Institute, Augustine Institute, and so forth. So I think integrating them with the church hierarchy and having them rely on each other is the way of the future.
Now, Tim, as far as the NAPA Institute itself, as you mentioned, Father is the president, and he's going to be emceeing along with you at the actual conference, I believe. But was this basically an idea that came to you? Was this something that came together through conversations with others? Where did the actual genesis of the idea for the NAPA Institute, and what is its mission?
Well, I've been with Father for now 15 years in his ministries. And in 2010, I was vacationing in Hawaii, and I was just hit like a ton of bricks that a conference had to be held. I'm in the hotel hospitality business. I have a resort in the Napa Valley. And the president of Ignatius, Mark Brumley, said to me years before, you need to get a conference going. And I said, I got enough to do, Mark. But this hit me, and in 2011, we held our first conference in July. And it is really, the first one was successful, but they've grown in success. They're different every year, and it's sort of like a Catholic carnival. It's an opportunity for us to be re-energized about our faith and for the attendees to learn more about the various Catholic traditions that they don't see in their local parish.
Now, that's at the Meritage Resort, and you usually get about 200 to 300. Is that what it's been in the past?
Yeah, actually last year we enjoyed a conference attendance of 350, and we're expecting probably a little over 400 this year. So very robust group. We have usually about 15 bishops, a couple of cardinals, 25 nuns, 25 priests and religious, and then the rest are lay people, some as couples, some as individuals. But it's a very vibrant group from all over the United States and even from Europe.
I noticed as well, Tim and Father Spitzer, diversity even in like the chaplains who were there. Is an Opus Dei priest, a Dominican I saw, and of course a Jesuit, even besides yourself, Father Spitzer.
Oh yes, there's a great diversity of priests. We have Byzantine priests. We also have a variety of liturgies that correspond to various rites. So it's really quite wonderful. There's a Eucharistic procession as well, and we have also a variety of retreats that are led by different retreat masters who are religious. So great. great variety of possibilities for people to experience the Catholic faith, both liturgically, in terms of retreat, spiritually, and of course academically, and through the talks, the presentations, and the workshops.
Right. Now, Tim, I was wondering.
About every religious order is represented.
Right. Let me ask you a question now. It looked like early on, is this something that's open to the general public? Can somebody decide to go? It looked like at one time it was. Is it still that way, or is it invitation only at this point?
No, it's open to the general public. This particular conference is. We do have conferences throughout the year that are invite only, but this particular conference is open to the general public.
Mm-hmm. Now, in something I saw where George Weigel, who I believe is on your board, said that if G.K. Chesterton were alive today, he would want to be at the NAPA Institute. Why would he want to be there, in your mind?
From my point of view, the sheer collection of everything Catholic is the attraction. I mean, we do try to get speakers who really do represent the Catholic intellectual tradition in the deepest possible ways, from medical ethics to faith and reason to the family to in this case this year the catechism, a variety of other kinds of talks. So for all intents and purposes, that academic angle is done very well. The spiritual angle with the masses, the confessions, the retreats, the Eucharistic procession, that is done very deeply as well. But also there's the camaraderie, which, as you know, G.K. Chesterton enjoyed thoroughly. And so there really is an exchange of all kinds of ideas that are going on, both from the leadership point of view, many of the people who attend are Catholic leaders. And so there's a great exchange between them. And in addition to that exchange, there are cigars after 9 o'clock p.m. Anyway, just a joke. But actually, a lot of people do come to those events. So it's really a good event all the way around, spiritually, companionship-wise, leadership-wise, and just presentations, academics-wise. And I think G.K. Chesterton would have burrowed right on into it.
You would have been very happy. Now, I noticed that this year there's also a wine and chocolate alternative event for the women's track, I guess for the women who don't smoke cigars, perhaps.
Yeah, most women don't smoke cigars, although some are out there. And so my wife being one of them that doesn't, so we decided we'd have a couple of events for the women. We did a track last year, a breakout called Feminine Genius, where women got a chance with professed as well as lay women. And so we're going to continue that with some social events, one being sparkling and chocolate, and then another being a religious bazaar where they could go out and buy religious articles, rosaries, icons, paintings at night while the masculine gender is out smoking cigars. I know the bishops and priests in particular will enjoy that evening session, which goes every evening, Wednesday through Saturday.
Right. It's interesting, too, because, we hear this, and you mentioned it, Father, the Catholic intellectual strength, spiritual and liturgical excellence, and the importance of camaraderie and fellowship. And that's one thing. And even you're discussing the fact of having a good cigar, let's say, or a glass of wine, or that's a very Catholic approach to faith, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is, and a very G.K. Chesterton approach to faith. Of course, I must add that the food is really excellent, and that would have pleased him as well. But it is very Catholic. I mean, we do really bring together all of the aspects. We're embodied people, but we're spiritual people. We're ensouled people, and we're also ensouled in our minds. Which of course is represented by our pursuit of those 5 transcendental desires of perfect truth, love, goodness, beauty, and home. So we put it all together, or try to anyway, and so it's kind of not just a Catholic version of the Aspen Institute or the Vail Institute, it's, which is addressed to leaders, but it's a Catholic version in a Catholic way of how are we going to develop leaders, how are we going to help them interact with the culture, with the newest kinds of material, how are we going to re-energize their faith, how are we going to help them to make new friends, all the things that are truly Catholic approaches. So so that's the genius of Tim Bush, I have to be honest with you, much more than myself. I stray dangerously close to you know, the academic and the spiritual a little more sometimes, but I get myself right back into the cigar action. I'm there every night. So
now I noticed that it says the NAPA Institute will serve lay and ordained Catholics in leadership roles in the church who have demonstrated local diocesan influence, have the potential for national influence, and are committed to learning, living, and sharing their faith to influence the culture in the next America. Let me ask you about that. Who came up with the focus on the next America, and what do we mean when we say the next America?
Well, Archbishop Charles Chaput, this came from an article that he wrote approximately around the time of the founding of the conference. He's our ecclesiastical advisor, and the next America is here. The next America is an America that is not based on Judeo-Christian principles anymore, but has become secular, trying to be politically correct by dumbing it down to the least common denominator, which is an abandonment of faith, as opposed to the faith for which this country was founded. So in such a secular society, we almost have to create a subculture, a culture of faith, restore the culture that Catholics enjoyed at one time in Western Europe, and have it be very much a part of our society, part of our culture, part of who we know, what we do, and how we socialize. The most common statement I hear from attendees is, I'm so invigorated, even from religious and bishops, that there are still people who believe in the great traditions of the Catholic faith. We haven't abandoned them. We've just put them in a time capsule. It's time to bring them back out. So we have the Tridentine Mass every day for those who enjoy that liturgical rite. It's not been abandoned by the church. It's been abandoned by the people in the pews. And so we need to restore it and remind people that it's still there for its beauty and great spiritual environment that it brings.
Now, I noticed one of the things clearly that you've added a women's track. Obviously, last year you've expanded it. It's my understanding you also have let's say, a youth track as well. Is that new this year?
Well, it started last year. It's really a young leaders track. So it'd be like from 25 to 45 years old.
Okay.
And again, what we're trying to do there is trying to get some of the younger people who are already involved, maybe in their parish, their diocese. They're starting to really get interested in a leadership role in the church. Maybe they take an active role on their parish council or their diocesan council, and all of a sudden they might want to have an even larger, more national role. And one of the great advantages of the NAPA Institute is all the sponsors that are there are these new kind of apostolates or missions that Tim was just talking about. So as you're kind of going through the conference, you're getting, talks from like the Magus Institute or from the Augustine Institute or from Dynamic Catholic or from Focus, the Fellowship of Catholic University Students, from Legatus, right, from the various Catholic colleges and universities and so forth. So as you're listening to these things, I mean, one of the energizing features, at least for me, is, wow, all this is going on a national level, and hopefully, when these young leaders are there, they can start to think about themselves not just as kind of local leaders, which is great and needs to be fostered, but also on a national level. Maybe there's something I can do through these other groups that will really help to get a kind of a national cultural change. I can use my leadership ability to affect the culture as a whole. And that's sort of the dream, and I think this track will really work in producing it.
Right, and also I would think in some of what you're talking about here and what the NAPA Institute is focused on in a sense of the lay leadership aspect, working hand in hand with the hierarchy, but really seeing, I guess, in many ways the call of Vatican II to the lay people to really get involved with the culture and to bring their Catholicism into their everyday lives. And one of the things that you have at the conference as well, besides bishops and Catholic professionals, you also talk about affluent Catholic leaders. And I was thinking about it in the sense of influential, but why affluent? Why is it important on one level for people, let's say, who have means to get involved, Tim?
Well, one of the things we're trying to do there through the sponsors is many only know about the ministries that they've been exposed to in their local diocese or parish. And so this is an opportunity, why we have so many sponsors, it's an opportunity for them to engage people of faith that are interested in expanding their faith and getting involved in other ministries, whether it's Catholic Leadership Institute, Augustine Institute, Young Catholic Professionals, Alliance Defending Freedom. There's all kinds of Catholic Mutual. There's all kinds of organizations that are there, Papal Foundation, Legatus. So when people put their resources, their treasure, behind a particular mission, their heart follows. And this is part of the way that you minister to wealthy and affluent people. It sounds counterintuitive. You know, you're going to ask somebody for some money so that he'll become more Catholic or be more consistent with the mission. Absolutely, because without that, they're not going to get engaged and involved. And so, as a benefactor myself, I've seen how it's changed my life radically. And we do it in a very professional manner so that people aren't being bird dogged all over the place to chase for donations. That's not what it's about. It's really just exposing them to something that the Holy Spirit will lead them into that ministry.
You know, and just adding on to what Tim said, notice that all those missions, you know, that he just mentioned, I just mentioned, they're really national missions, and they're very focused on changing the culture as a whole, of creating a whole new generation of people, whether it's, Dynamic Catholic, or whether it's, Focus, the Fellowship of Catholic University Students, whatever it might be. It's focused on making a change to the whole culture. So I think it's a way of really getting those benefactors to not only, we don't want them to abandon their local apostolates, obviously, but to get them more involved in national cultural apostolates.
Well, one of the things that strikes me in listening to what you're saying as well dovetails into Mother's mission for EWTN of supporting and promoting other Catholic like-minded apostolates that are loyal to the magisterium and the Holy Father, of course. And what's great, I think, in many cases, I know with EWTN we've seen this, and I'm sure the same thing, is there's lots of good people out there, some of beans and others who have talents and treasures, either way, who are looking for opportunities, but they're not always aware that these things are out there and for them to participate in, correct? And this is a way for them to see that.
Precisely, yeah, that's exactly what it's about. It's one of the third legs of the stool. You have liturgy, you have apostolic education, and then you have networking and exposure to these other ministries. Just meeting people. We've had some incredible stories. Yeah. We're going to expose a miracle that happened last year at the NAPA Institute to one of our board members. And people need to hear this testimony because miracles do happen today. And they do happen to our friends and to our family. And we just have to have confidence in prayer. We need to see that there's other people that can help us with our journey because they've already been on the pilgrimage that we're about to embark.
Now, one of the things, obviously, you've had the NAPA Institute events that happens there, the one that's coming up on July 29th through August 2nd, but you also have other events which you alluded to as well. Some are invitation only. I know there was one at Catholic U, as I recall, I think sometime last year, that I know our CEO, Michael Warsaw, was at as well. Are you planning others like that throughout the year, this year?
Yes, we actually have a conference at Catholic U in March 15th to 17th, 2016. It is Centesimus Annus, which is the 25th anniversary of that encyclical. And we have a great relationship with Catholic U, and more particularly the Catholic U Business School, which I chair the advisory board of visitors. And we just think there's some great things going on there, and we want to support it. We also have a conference going in April at Santa Croce, and then a pilgrimage on to Israel. I envision that the NAPA Institute in 10 years is going to become a Catholic lifestyle institute. It's an institute that will engage Catholics in their travel, in their attending the retreats, and their spiritual direction, and they're attending a conference like the NAPA Institute will have each year, and whatever else we can create. We need to hang around with and associate with people of like mind, because if we hang around and associate with people that aren't of like mind, we're going to become who they are, because it's a natural a part of our society, of our habitual society. So by developing this strong and encouraging people to be strongly firm to their faith, we can expand the faith in an orthodox and authentic way.
Right. I know certainly EWTN, we like to say, helps Catholics get from Sunday to Sunday. I'm wondering if you have even particular experiences, either one of you, where you dealt with people maybe who were meant to be good Catholics. They were trying to do the right thing, but they were getting, let's say, consumed or influenced too much by society, and by participating in these kind of conferences have really had their faith reborn.
Oh, I definitely have. We get emails on this all the time, and people have just, written, that they heard, for example, a talk on something, and they didn't even realize how much they kind of had lapsed into a more secular mentality, even sort of doubting some of the precepts of their faith. And all of a sudden, you get somebody like a Joseph Pierce maybe talking about Tolkien or Shakespeare, or you get a George Weigel talking about world Catholicism, or you get somebody, one of our many faith and reason speakers, who are speaking, literally about the foundations, the reasonable foundations for the faith, and all of a sudden, boom, it's like wake up call. This is much more grounded than you think. Catholicism is not just intellectual on the side, or what you might call intellectual light, right? I mean, it's really intellectual deep, and of course the rationale for the faith is exceedingly deep. It goes into the sciences, it goes into historical criticism, it goes into cultural criticism, it goes into all kinds of things, but it's put in a way that's exciting, it's animating, it's not dry academic lectures. Believe me, I've been through a lot of those. and our speakers we choose them, to be dynamic, and to be, people who can engage not only during the time of the talk, but actually that the speakers will go out and talk with people during the cigars or during the meals and during the workshops, that they really have time with the speakers. So and these are really bright people,
right?
And so it should be a real opportunity for both the speakers to get to know them and them to get to know the speakers. And
again, the conference basically equipping Catholics for the next America, July 29th through August 2nd. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Tim, in the sense of the speakers and the focus. You've got great speakers, of course. You've got Scott Hahn and Tim Gray and so many others, and Cardinal Schornborn's going to be there. But I did notice that right at the beginning on the Thursday session, one talk is on marriage, family, and the new evangelization, followed by Beloved, the Mystery and Meaning of Marriage. I'm assuming that was done on purpose.
It was, because anticipating the Holy Father's visit in September in Philadelphia, and the conversation that we have on marriage, of course, we're about to hear from the Supreme Court. So it's an issue that's under siege. There's no question about it. And I think it's, especially for our young people, they kind of see this as the next discrimination in America. We discriminated against people of different skin color in the 50s and 60s and prior. And now it's time to address this situation with gay marriage. And they're just mistaken. It's a completely different issue, and we need to make sure they understand the teachings of the Church, that we absolutely love the people. But we have to have a standard about what marriage is, regardless of whether the U.S. government in its infinite wisdom decides to legislate it differently than God created it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think also we want to put it into a context of a contemporary theology of the family, so that, these leaders will have a language and a conceptual base to go out there and make the family look attractive again. Not only attractive, but necessary, not only for the survival of the culture, though certainly that, but so that the culture can elevate itself out of its extreme narcissism, egocentricity, and frankly, just self-idolatry. So, the family is a way out of self. I mean, it's a way, I always say, my brothers and sisters can keep me humble, and humility, I can tell you, is a great path out of the self. And so I think what we need to do, though, is show what the family is and should be and can be as an ideal. You know, it's hard, you know, sometimes to be in that family, but boy, left to ourselves, you know, we're in the narcissistic hell of John Paul Sartre. And that's, you know, for all intents and purposes, we want to bring that point home too. Family's not just good. The family's not just attractive. The family's necessary. Exactly. The family is the core of our culture, always has been. The church has always recognized it, right? It's not just overarching politics. And the more you de-gut the family, the more you just put power into the power of the culture I'm talking about into the hands of a lot of, you know, not necessarily benevolently minded politicos. And I by the way, I like a lot of political leaders. I have no, you know, objection to them. But what I'm trying to say is, you know, they're not a replacement for their family. They're not a replacement for intimate love. They're not a replacement for humble love. They're not a replacement for compassionate self-sacrifice. Only the family can give that. And so anyway, as Tim put it so well, it's one of the themes of the conference in preparation for the papal visit.
Right, exactly. And Tim, just before we go, if someone's sitting out there, they're watching this interview and they really hadn't heard about the NAPA Institute and they're very interested, what should they do? How should I find out more about it?
Well, if they just Google NAPA Institute, it'll take them to our website. There's a phone number, or you can register online if you're more comfortable with that. We have, as they say, operators standing by, and we can still register people right up to the conference. So I hope people will consider coming. It'll be life-changing, and you'll have a lot of fun. You'll leave on high, because the last evening on Saturday, I often say people are drunk with the Holy Spirit. They have gotten so much faith in such a short period of time, and they're just walking around on cloud nine. So you will have a lot of fun.
So that's why the conference continues to grow.
Right. Very good. A little summer Pentecost there coming up in July 29th through August 2nd. Thank you so much. Father Spitzer, we'll have more from you in the future, I'm sure, doing a show from our West Coast studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Tim Bush, for all the wonderful work you're doing out there at the Christ Cathedral campus, as well as with the NAPA Institute, all your other efforts. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Doug Keck, a special bookmark. Just a reminder, the NAPA Institute, its upcoming summer conference. You can go online and find out. Equipping Catholics for the Next America, July 29th through August 2nd. A great lineup. Join us next time on EWTN's Bookmark.